Richard, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Kim.
Excellent. And welcome, listeners, to this, The Balanced Mind. This episode, we're going to explore health and well-being around your business and what to do when things are not quite as it should be. Um, this podcast is all about the intersection of spreadsheets and the professional side of things with your own internal sat nav, if you like. So thank you for making a suggestion on this because health is a big thing, isn't it? I'm quite surprised at how many people I get coming through, and I don't necessarily know straight away they've got a health issue until later. And then they tell me what they're struggling with or what's been going on. And they've just been carrying on. And I don't know, because I haven't asked them, whether they have ignored it or they didn't think it was relevant or they're just showing up and putting a brave face on it. I don't know.
I think it could well be it's any or all of the above, isn't it, really, in that respect? I mean, it's something that we, obviously as good friends, it's something that, we talk about our own health with each other. And I think you said, look, this is something that we could do more openly on the podcast. Certainly in my experience, we'll go on to talk about it shortly, but in my experience, I've been quite open with the people that I know about my own health, and I've found that in return, they've been much more open coming back. And A, that is really supportive. But B, it is eye-opening as well because as you just said there, after you can know someone a long time and have no idea about a particular challenge that they're having to address, for instance.
Yeah, and it goes on all the time because I think we've said in the past podcast that, we put on this front of this professional or this person, and even within our own families. I know from my own perspective, and we'll cover that maybe, but we put on this front that we're okay. And if anybody asks you and it drives me nuts because I've done it myself, are you okay? Fine. It's
Yeah.
let's not go there. And I don't necessarily understand it all. So it's yeah, so I think having a talk about it today is quite useful because particularly around work, it can be a real challenge, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, since I started with our own businesses, I think it's slightly different when you're employed. And I'm not dismissing it at all, but it's maybe a different conversation, a different sort of challenge. I think today we're just really going to focus on that sort of leadership impact as well. But certainly, when you run your own business, there's no walking away from it, or you think there's no walking away from it. And in the time that, when we've set up our own business, I've been through depression, I've been through divorce, I've been through deaths in the family, now, health issues myself.
Mm.
And the fact that you feel that you've got no choice other than to get up and get in every day. Um, I think in one respect, there's positives in that. It can give you some stability. But of course, at the same time, it can work against you health-wise as well. It means you maybe don't spend the time, you sort of push the problem to one side rather than deal with it and things like that. So it's it's a big, big issue. Fortunately, I think there's much more awareness now around both physical and mental health, and I think people are starting to take a slightly different approach to it. We're both of a generation where generally it was, look, get over yourself, or leave it at home, come into work, work will
Leave it at
take
the
your mind
door.
off it, all this sort of stuff. I think we are slowly moving on from that. But
Mm.
it's a massive, massive thing. How often do we talk about, as the leader of a business, you set the tone, you set the pace, you're always, you're the vision they're looking for, you provide the energy and all the rest of it. If you're not feeling great, and I'm talking beyond just a sniffle or something like that, but particularly if you've got something long term going on, then wow, that's tough. That is hard.
Yeah, and I think in my youth, in my youth, even when the children were small, I was intolerant of poor health, which is ironic because I think I had poor health even then and didn't recognize it as such. Because some of the conditions I've got, doctors still can't work with right now. So hello, um, let alone diagnose it necessarily back then. And so, I still do joke. I need to wind my neck in a bit, really. That when the kids were ill, it was all to do with water. It was cold water, hot water, or ice. Just which one do you want? Because that was it. Because when you went to the doctors, and I had a really good doctor at the time, and I didn't think it, but I did then. He wouldn't give you antibiotics for everything, and certainly when they were young, you just needed it solved. But on the whole, when he wouldn't give you anything, it's right. "Oh, well, we just got to get on with it. What do you want?" And I think I've done the same for me. I've ignored it. I've done the basics, but it was never really addressing the root cause. And I think what that meant for me in business is that I can see as I tell people the condition that I'm living with, they don't understand. And if they do understand that, and this is not a criticism, by the way, they only understand it in their model of the world, their lens as they see the world. So let me give you an example. I've had post-viral fatigue syndrome after glandular fever. Bit of an idiot because this is probably about the third or fourth time that I had something like this, and I didn't pay attention when I was 36. I didn't pay attention when I was in my late 40s. So it took me out when I was in my late 50s, and I had to give up work, and I was in bed for 6 months. Nobody knew, or they didn't have the time to know, and so I was pretty much isolated. And it was when I quit my job because I couldn't, they were asking me to go back, and that was employed. When you're coming back, well, what's the timeline? What are you doing about it? And the doctors didn't even know what was wrong because they hadn't diagnosed glandular fever at that point. I was just ill and it was go home and rest. Right. So it was only about 12 months later, and I'd started my business thinking at least I can work with the ups and downs, the peaks and troughs of what was going on, that I got something from the doctors. But even now, I'm talking to people about burnout, and you can see them thinking, yeah, but you just go to bed for a few days, don't you? No. Because true burnout is physically, mentally, emotionally, and for me, spiritually, and a lot of others, spiritually, including any religious beliefs that you have. Done. I've got nothing else to give. This is it. And I've just come through another phase and I've still kept turning up, but nobody sees what I have to do to achieve that.
Yeah.
I think that's the key here. We do not know what's going on behind the facade that people put out there.
Do you think it's even harder for a woman?
Um, I'm going to say yes with what I know right now, but only because our biochemistry, our electrochemistry, all that good stuff is much more complicated than a man's. So it's a biological complication, not necessarily because we're a woman per se, the gender. It's more the biology behind it. And I don't think there's a greater understanding about those hormones that we have to
Hmm.
face. I mean, there's a whole raft of things going on around the menopause right now. And there are occasions where I think, let's not ram it down everybody's throat. Let's just be sensible about this, highlight it. But it's almost that tick box exercise we've talked about before, when we were talking soft skill training. The businesses are doing it, and I get it because businesses are one way of disseminating information out to the masses because it's the one place we all have to go. There's NHS don't have time for it. There's nowhere else, I don't think, and somebody can correct me. Please do correct me because it's useful. But menopause has raised its identity in the last 7, 8 years, and I think there is a better recognition that I think our lifestyle, our food chain, our reliance on drugs and less on healthy living are not helping because our hormones are sent awry by all the, I'm going to get a bit political here, I have to be careful, by all the drugs that are used and the chemicals on our food, which everybody's been exposed to, but we've got that many more hormones to get crossed with it that it causes us a bigger problem. So right now, yes, I would say so. But again, I don't know the full research.
No, and I think. I just get the impression that it's first of all, I agree with all of that. As a man looking out in, if you like, I've always, it's certainly in later years, I've recognised that in general, men have less health issues through their lives than women have. But tend to go downhill quicker at the end. That's how I would define it. And certainly after the last 12 months we've had, that's my own sort of personal evidence of that.
Yeah.
So from a work point of view, that means basically, okay, during your working years you'll be fine. In retirement, maybe not so. But for a woman, it's like, yeah, you've got challenges throughout your life. And that, and given that we are still slowly pulling ourselves away from work being a male-based part of everyone's lives, which is clearly is complicated matters. Oh, it's women's troubles. It's she's not going to be any use to us. She can't be a manager because all that sort of nonsense. So I think so. My view is it would seem that it's a lot tougher for women anyway, and it's hard because I think there's a strength now in being more open and almost like showing our vulnerabilities. Um, but that can, and I think that's less likely to be used again against a man than it is against a woman.
It's interesting. Was a couple of thoughts went through my head there. First of all, did you know most medication is tested on or has been tested on men, not women?
Really?
Oh, hello.
No.
No wonder we're a bit screwed up.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing with women is that when they are struggling, they are already much stronger because they get on with things. They've got an inner strength. They've that inner drive to do whatever it is they've got to do. So if they're failing in terms of their health, you can rest assured that they've already turned up in a different mode beforehand, and they've just been one of my favorite sayings, and this isn't just applying to women but just a generic, been strong for too long, so they are likely to suffer. And I get it as a guy who, coming back to our tribal ways, was very focused because he was the hunter on what's got to be done. It must be very frustrating at work to have somebody who, is always struggling with something, time of the month, or the
Yeah.
pregnancy or menopause. We must we how we've managed to, hold our own there and still been showing up. That's incredible strength, isn't it? Well, I
Yeah.
think it is. But I do get why it can be very frustrating for some guys. But the point is, they've all got women in their life.
Yeah.
And therefore, there's got to be an element of compassion that you can transfer. Now, do not get me wrong. There's some that may be playing on it, but they're few and far between. Most women are doing the best they can, and they bring some real value to what they're doing from that inner strength, that resiliency, that reliability, because they'll do guilt better than anybody else. They don't
Yeah.
breathe.
I was given some advice by a friend of mine a good few years ago now when we were talking about business, and that's that you plan for the right majority, not the wrong minority.
Love it.
And what they meant by
Whoever
that
said that,
was,
we love them.
yeah. So it's when and you see so many situations now where we're all sort of being penalised because of the behaviour of a few. When what we should do is go, okay, celebrate the good people and those who are bad, deal with them separate. And I think that the particularly with mental health now and some of these more hidden disabilities and things like that,
Mm.
without doubt, there are some people who are using that, to their own personal advantage. But the vast majority of the people who are suffering that situation aren't. And, I see some brilliant examples of employers standing by a team member who's going through a tough time, because they recognize that this person is genuine and they want to support them and they go above and beyond to
Yeah.
try and help them out.
Mm.
Um, Equally, I see, particularly in large organizations, I see situations where there's people who are quite clearly playing the system, and everybody else around them is very frustrated and having to work harder because they're covering their gaps and all the rest of it. But management won't do anything about it because that person is in the system and ticking the boxes. So it's we should always I think that's why the openness is so important because if people are struggling to open up to their partners, their colleagues, their team, the people they work with, if they're a team member to open up to their managers, their partners, I think it's an important thing to do. I get confidentiality, don't get me wrong, and you know, um, but it's not one of those things that you can just go, here's the HR rules, that's what we do.
It is a difficult one, isn't it? And what was going through my head was depression. I had depression in my mid-30s as a result of a broken marriage and God knows what else going on, and a realization that I wasn't living my life. I was living for everybody else. It took me a long time to get around that, but depression is a really good example of a hidden illness that people may not realize. Some depressives are highly functioning, and you would not have any idea. But for many, there are signs there if we can watch for them.
Yeah,
The change of behavior, um, the change in motivation or energy levels, the over reliance. And I love the fact that you said you're not drinking caffeine at the moment, and it was really difficult for you to get through those couple of days.
horrendous.
I hear you. I was a caffeine addict almost because I was raised on tea. There was always the kettle on. Oh, somebody's come in. Let's have a cup of tea. Oh, you're having a problem. Let's have a cup of tea. Hurrah! Let's celebrate. Let's get a cup of tea. So it was a cup of tea for everything. And so when I went through my very stressful, depressed period, I was drinking 6 mugs, by the way, not cups, 6 mugs of tea by lunchtime.
Right,
So
wow.
I developed a caffeine intolerance that even today I can't do caffeine without it sending my heart rate through the roof for the next 36, 48 hours. It's just crazy. People think it's faddy, but there's some genuine reasons why we've got to be careful with it. So they will turn to something. And it's interesting. It was a good friend who spotted it for me. Some of the language I was using, I was constantly moaning about something. Um, and they turned around and said to me, "Do you realize?" And it was really pulling me up. And it was part of the depression because I felt helpless and hopeless and didn't know I could do anything. And when you realize that somebody's in a tough way, it's scary for others. How do you handle it? I can't deal with that because they don't want to. I know they're not going to catch it, but this idea that, that's going to need a lot more effort than I can give it. But there are different ways of helping, isn't there? I did the mental health first aid because I wanted to understand what it
Yeah.
was about. And their signposts, that's pretty much what they're looking for. And I was a little disappointed that they focused very heavily around the suicide aspect, but the idea is that you can, signpost people to different organizations, and that's all we need to prepare for. If somebody in your world is depressed, not well, is just make sure they get the right help. You don't have to take that I was going to say onus on you because it might feel like that, particularly if it's somebody you know well. But I think that's what businesses, that's all they need to be able to do. And they do a good job for most. They have private healthcare or, opportunities to talk to a counselor or something like that, some sort of insurance that covers it. So there is something there, but I'm wittering now.
I think it goes back, you and I have talked an awful lot about the value of culture. And I think you see it when it comes to health issues, it's a very powerful thing because I've always said that one of the big changes for us in our business lives was when we committed to only work with people who we were happy working with.
Mm.
We need to be happy working with them and respect them, and they need to be happy working with us. And that became a fundamental of our business lives and changed the world for us from that point of view. When I was diagnosed with prostate cancer about 7 months ago now, um, and having decided on the way to approach it, and I'm halfway through the radiotherapy side of it now, I've been very open with, obviously, with family and friends, but also with people who we work with, um, because I just felt that was the right thing to do. I've not gone around advertising it. Probably else I'd be with it in prostate cancer. If I'm talking to a man, I want them to know the importance of getting checked. So
That's
that's why I've
that's
done
that's
that.
really important. Well done.
But what the support that I have had, I've got an amazing wife, an amazing family anyway. Their support I knew would be brilliant, and I've been blown away by it. But the support by people who you would define as clients has been remarkable. They and the way that they've opened up in conversations, I've learned much more about them as well. The way they've come to me with tips, suggestions, ideas, the way that they've built up my confidence by talking about their friend who's had it and had it 10 years ago, and just it's scarily common once you start talking like this.
Oh, yes, it is.
But
More so than you realize, I think. Yeah.
and it's validated that we're working with the right people, but it's just to me shows the importance of those decisions made however many years ago when we said, yeah, this is somebody we want to work with, because it highlights the importance of it. It shows it's a person to person business still, but also I've had so they have helped me and continue to help me enormously through this whole process. Just with support, with building confidence. But even that, have you tried drinking this? Why don't you try eating this? And oh yeah, my brother had that. He did this and it. Just awesome, absolutely awesome. Nothing to do with business, but it's all centered on business relationships and how they started. And I was thinking the other night about it. That, this it's further evidence, if I ever needed any more, that having a basic rule of I'm only going to work with nice people is so important. So important. I didn't, it wasn't, we put that rule in place in about 2002. So I wasn't saying what was going to happen in 2025. But it's just further evidence that if you focus on being human and working with humans of a similar mind, similar values like that, yes, it pays massive dividends business wise, but it also you have these unseen things that come back to you, and it's the old BT thing, isn't it? It's good to talk, and it so is.
And I think that is a very key thing. You've got to have somebody that you can talk to about it because bottling it up is not good for you either. So I love that that's the case. How have you how is it working around with the business? Because one of the things obviously we were talking about is how our health shows up, how we're coping with it, and then obviously how we manage it with the business. How are you doing that for you?
Well, I think this relationship with the clients has helped that enormously.
Yeah.
I can see another scenario where people are going, well, I still need that doing, and I still need that doing, and I still want it, and this sort of stuff. And in every case, people went, look, hey, whatever you need, however you want to work, we're quite happy with it. Because all of this month, I'm having the radiotherapy treatment, which is very, very time consuming and quite tiring. So I said to all of them, look, I'm going to try and work sort of half days through this month. And they've gone, look, absolutely fine, whatever. Yeah, whatever, we can work around that. We can delay that meet. Don't worry about it. And as I'm into it, I think I was being wildly optimistic saying half days because it's more demanding and time consuming like that. But I've yet to have any client push back on any needs. So I think that first of all, that openness in the first place, if I tried to keep it to myself, tried to sort of bluff my way through and they not tell them about it, then I would be putting huge pressure on myself to deliver. I'd be
Mm.
putting pressure on those around me to help me do that, to step into the gaps, and I'd be letting down clients because they're going, well, hang on, why have you had to cancel that meeting, and why haven't I got that report yet, and this sort of stuff. So I think that openness right at the start about, look, this is the scenario I'm now in. This is, let's have a conversation about how it can work because I need to be able to, I need to be able to reprioritize myself. Yeah, when I go back through what I was saying earlier about all those other things in my life, in every case there, I tried to bulldoze through it, and just get on with work. And I'm fortunate. I have an amazing business partner who, has been through those ups and downs with me. But also, it's not the right thing to do. It isn't the right thing to do, particularly with the mental health things. It certainly isn't the right thing to do. Um, I would deal with it differently today. I would be more open back then. It's the lesson that I've learned, and the difference it makes now is huge.
Yeah.
Because rather than business becoming another pressure, it's like doing these recordings. It's actually nice to do something normal.
Mm.
It makes a difference. It actually adds rather than competes.
I love that. And I think, when you were talking about putting pressure on yourself, when people don't realize this, because our body is a healing machine and it heals all the time, particularly overnight. So getting regular sleep is really vital. And if you're not getting it, for God's sake, get yourself down to the doctors, because that's something else I've had a problem with. I've got sleep apnea, which has led to something else. So, and possibly the cause of the chronic fatigue as much as anything. Who knew? So
Mm.
get get your sleep in, and if you're not getting it, do whatever you can to make sure that you are. Because what happens is when we are stressed or focused on the pressure that we're putting on ourselves to perform, to be whoever, our body doesn't have time to do it. It's not like AI where it can do lots of little tasks all at the same time. It can only do certain things at certain times. We need to give it the space. So I am loving to hear that you're doing that. I'm loving your clients for allowing you that time because you need it to make sure that you can rest, recover, recuperate, and then, yeah, as you say, you've got to go through the cycle again, at least at this time, because it's so, so important. So well done. I don't know enough about healing, but I do know how the body operates in terms of, the more functional stuff than anything else. So I was going to ask you a question then about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So you're obviously getting good feedback. That's fabulous. What would your suggestion be for somebody who has had to step out of or back from the business for a period of time? What would your recommendations, bearing in mind your own experiences right now, what would that be?
I think it's the world has changed when when you get a diagnosis or when you recognize that you've got to address something, then the world changes at that point, doesn't it? Because prior to that, you're going, I'm going to work X hours a week and do this and do that, and then all of a sudden you're going, well, actually, I'm not, am I? Yeah, that so that first thing, that reality, and that's where you then go down. Okay, so what now? What do I need to do?
Mm,
First, but by almost by definition, you've now quite rightly put your health first and go, okay, right, well, this is what I need to be doing to sort my health out. What does that leave me with? And what can I do with that? Is it a matter of quite literally shutting the business down for 6 months, 12 months? Even more extreme, selling the business, getting rid of the business, and so is it at that point? Is it about okay, just my team can step into the gap, or I've got a partner who can step into the gap, or let's have that conversation. Is it about I need to maybe change aspects of the business, maybe stop that service or stop that plan, focus on those clients, get rid of that group of clients, for instance. In other words, I mean, something we've talked before about is about accountants being realistic about their businesses. We all have these grand ideas of what we want to do, and we all get sucked into what's happening on social media and thinking, oh, I should be doing that sort of firm. And when in fact,
yeah,
what we should do is go, well, let's look at where I am today. Let's look at what I've got. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? How can I make the best out of what I've got? And I think it's that scenario, but it's almost like changed in some cases literally overnight, hasn't it? You come back from the doctors, think, wow, that was tough. Okay, let's sit down. My business, the world of my business around my business has now changed. Therefore, what does that mean? How can I make the best of what I have? Is this a temporary thing? Is it a permanent thing? What do I, in some cases, it's almost, it's like, I've known scenarios with others where they've been diagnosed with a particular condition and they've actually flipped that as a strength in their business. They've gone out and looked for business people with that same condition because they can go, I get it, I understand it. I know that what happens to you. So I can now advise you within the context of that, condition. So that it's not the end of the world when this stuff happens. We all see it. We see so many people who have got disabilities and all the rest of it who are amazing.
see it all the time. You're right.
Yeah, and clearly have gone through that point and go, okay, right, well, we all wish this wouldn't have happened to us, but hey, what, it has. So I either now roll over, give in, or I go, right, my life has changed. How do I make the most of that? And I think it's that sort of a approach. You need to, to sit down and go, it's happened. This is where I am. I think one of the hardest to deal with is where you don't know when the exit is. Is this something I'm dealing with for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, my life? In some cases that's easy to deal with and go, okay, well, I've got this. I have no idea when I'm not going to have it, if ever. So that makes planning harder. But I think to sit down and go, all right, let's get a blank piece of paper out. Let's just look at this is where I am. Tell you what, why don't I do it? like this for 6 months. Let's see where we are after 6 months. But I think we have to, we're all going to feel sorry for ourselves from time to time. But
Yes.
there's yeah, there are in most cases there's so much support that's available out there now. I know the NHS is under severe pressures, but there are still amazing people within the NHS, and there's lots of really good resources there. There's lots of great external resources. You've talked about private health, things like that can help. Most people have got a network of friends, colleagues, employees, maybe clients, customers can be part of that network. This is not something that you have to address on your own,
No.
whatever it is. And therefore, be proactive in what you do business wise. And if the best thing to do is to shelve the business for 6 months, because the most important thing in this is that person's health.
Yes.
Yeah. And the second most important thing is the family around that person. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
because I must admit, one of the common things that I say, and I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of the podcast, but I just want to say this. The person who's got the condition, except for mine, because it's not really recognized by the NHS, bless it, is that there is support for them. You've got support for your condition. Some of the people that I've seen, they've got support, but the family don't. They're the ones who are, propping up the family member who's struggling. And I think, I just want to acknowledge them because I get it. Years ago, I had a father-in-law, called him Dad, bless him, because he was in my life for a long time, who had several strokes and it was a bit of a mess towards the end. And I set up a group for mum actually to say carer support group on Facebook. I became so overwhelmed with how quickly it grew. I had to hand it off to somebody else because I just couldn't deal with it because of my own condition, But it just goes to show there's such a need for these people to have somewhere to go, to talk, to download. They don't necessarily need you to answer them or provide solutions, although, that can be, something that's there, but sometimes they just need to talk about it. So
Mhm.
you do have somebody in your world who is going through tough times, or if you are the person going through tough times, find someone. And if you can't feel comfortable, and I get it, to talk with friends and family, find somebody like myself who will deal with the therapeutic side or will deal with, how to work through it, mindset, or going for a massage, because you'll invariably talk to somebody there as well. So just find somebody to download on. And if I may just offer a couple of pearls of wisdom from me. I am big on doing more and more of what we love. So I love that you did that back in 2002. You're ahead of my game. And um, I also believe that we owe it to ourselves to start becoming more self-aware of what's going on in our body, not just in our mind, because the body will have been shouting at us and we don't recognize the signals. We can't, because it's not saying, you've got chronic fatigue or prostate cancer or, atrial fibrillation or whatever else. It's not saying that. It's just shouting in its own way. There's something not right. And it's the younger audience here, because it was never told to us, was it, Richard, to do that? But take even just once a month, just tune in with yourself, check in with yourself. How you feeling? Is there any common aches and pains, or is there any grumblings going on within your body that says actually there's something not right? Do not ignore it. It will be your body talking to you to say something needs, and it could be as simple as minerals or vitamins that you're short on. I heard magnesium is really good for depression. Can't honestly say. I know I use magnesium for when my bones aren't feeling very happy, my knees. So, who knows? But listen is what I would say. Any more parting words from you, Richard?
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's ironic that many who run their own businesses are control freaks, at least to some extent. Yeah, and they back themselves to fix stuff. Just take that same approach to your own health. You know,
I think you're right. Thank you so much. I'm sure if you are experiencing anything similar to Richard, he would love a conversation with you, particularly if you're finding it impacting your business. And likewise for me on chronic fatigue, gut health, or allergies. I'm really good on those. none of which the NHS can help me with. I've just got to
No.
sort it out. Thank you so much. It was a really interesting topic, and I'm sure there will be other things we can talk about around that later on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.